Adam, Donald Trump's claiming he'll be a witness. Judge Merchan will rule Monday morning about what from Trump's past prosecutors would be allowed to raise at trial. Tell us about that.
As you mentioned, Jonathan, the objective of this Sandoval notice, as the prosecutors put forward, is to establish the boundaries of cross-examination if Trump testifies and how to confront him with what are known as prior bad acts. Now, the point of it is to pierce his credibility, damage his credibility. It's not to raise every bad thing a court has found that he's done. And as you noted, the judge seemed very inclined to grant the motion as to the sanctions order. And it's a blistering passage saying that he's a serial litigant who weaponizes the justice system against his political adversaries. And you're going to see, I would expect the judge to apply the same kind of care that he's done in prior rulings, establishing the boundaries of what's fair game, what is too much that would go over the line in his due process rights, but also give what the runway to prosecutors to speak to his credibility. There have been a lot of court findings that he isn't a trustworthy litigant, that he ignores the gag orders. The prosecutors are requesting the gag orders to confront him with those. They're requesting to raise the E. Jean Carroll verdicts to the extent that they show that. And this is a fine line that the judges and the prosecutors are going to walk. It's not about the sexual assault on E. Jean Carroll, but the defamation is what the prosecutors said, to show his credibility that he was found to have lied about the sexual assault and actual malice. So the judge will give these rulings. He's going to put on record why he thinks it's fair game that if Trump decides to take the stand, that all of these findings from years of litigation can or cannot be used to confront him and inform him to, buyer beware if he decides to actually take that step.
Yeah. And Joyce, the thought of being cross-examined about repeated incidents showing you're a liar would be enough to keep most defendants from testifying. I know it'd keep me off the stand, but what about Trump?
Well, I guess that's the question here, right? I mean, the job for the judge, when he looks at each of these incidents, he has to determine whether the evidence has very important value for prosecutors, so much so that it outweighs any risk of undue prejudice to Donald Trump. Those are the two equities that he has to balance. And the courts in New York have said that's a decision that they leave to the sound discretion of the trial judge. It's really up to him. He's the man on the ground looking at the evidence. So you see this act after act where judges have found that Trump has abused the legal process or that Trump has lied. His lawyers are objecting, saying these are facts that have nothing to do with this case and they couldn't come in. And that's just not what this argument is about, because as Adam has done a great job of laying out, the only thing that the government could use these prior instances for, at least on cross-examination, is to attack Donald Trump's credibility so that they can then argue to the jury, you shouldn't believe anything he told you on the stand. Any defenses that he said this man has lied in the past, and you should judge his credibility today in light of all these other times that he's been less than truthful. That should be enough to keep him off the stand. But with Trump, who knows?
Right. And Joyce, as an attorney, did we learn anything this week about the control Trump's lawyers are able to exert over him?
Well, I think what we learned is that Judge Merchan does not believe that his lawyers can control him. I don't think the judge was being critical of the lawyers. I think he was just acknowledging the reality that this week prosecutors identified 7 additional instances where Donald Trump violated a clear gag order. This is a client who is out of control, a client who does not understand the bounds of propriety, who shows no concern about the safety of witnesses and family members of court personnel. This is not the typical client who listens to his lawyers. And there was one, Jonathan, just one little snippet we got from reporting in the courtroom that I thought was very telling. And it was that as jurors, potential jurors were coming in to be questioned, everyone in the courtroom rises. That's what you do in a trial. The jury comes in and out ahead of everybody else. All of the lawyers, the defendant, everybody stands up to show respect. When the jury leaves, same thing, everybody stands up. And this week, the only person in that courtroom who wasn't doing that was Donald Trump. These were the people coming into the courtroom who might hold his future in their hands. He showed no respect for him. I know that his lawyers would have told him, we stand up for the jury, both when they enter and when they leave, to show respect. The fact that Donald Trump chose not to do that shows just how little he's willing to listen to his lawyers.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.